You wouldn't have noticed me that night. Nobody ever does. I was just another shadow moving between tables, collecting champagne flutes and wiping away the remnants of laughter and success. The crystal chandeliers cast their golden light on silk gowns and tailored suits. The air was thick with expensive perfume and the intoxicating scent of achievement. This was their world, the world of those who had made it, and I was the one who cleaned up after they left. That night changed everything, but not in the way you might think. Have you ever felt invisible? Like you're moving through life, but nobody really sees you. That was me. Every single day I'd been cleaning conference halls for 7 years. 7 years of watching other people celebrate their victories while I picked up their trash. But here's what I learned that night. Sometimes the most powerful moments happen when nobody's watching. Sometimes the smallest gesture can crack open the universe. The gala was for tech entrepreneurs, the kind of people who turn ideas into empires, the kind who speak in millions and think in billions. I waited in the service corridor, watching through the crack in the door as they gave their speeches about changing the world. And there I was, in my faded uniform, holding a mop bucket, wondering if I'd ever be more than the person who cleaned up after the world changes. But life has a strange way of flipping the script when you least expect it. That night, as the last guest stumbled out, laughing about their stock options and exit strategies, I began my work. You know what's heavier than a trash bag full of champagne bottles? The weight of dreams you've been carrying for too long. As I moved through the empty hall, the silence was deafening. Just hours ago, this place had been alive with possibility. Now it was just me and the echoes. I found myself reading the name cards left on tables. Tech CEOs, venture capitalists, people who'd built something from nothing. What would it feel like to sit at one of these tables, to be the person giving the speech instead of mopping the floor after it? You might think I was bitter, but I wasn't. I was curious. Every champagne flute I picked up, I wondered about the person who'd held it. What was their story? What failures had they faced before standing in this room? Because here's what nobody tells you about success. It always looks inevitable from the outside. But from the inside, it's messy, it's uncertain, it's full of moments where you're not sure you'll make it. How do I know this? Because that night, I was about to learn it firsthand. Have you ever wondered what separates those who make it from those who don't? Is it talent, luck, connections? Keep watching. Because what happened next challenged everything I thought I knew about success. The conference hall was massive. It would take me 4 hours to clean it properly, 4 hours alone with my thoughts and the ghosts of other people's triumphs. But sometimes the universe has other plans. As I worked my way toward the main stage, I noticed something unusual. The podium light was still on, casting a small circle of brightness in the darkened room. And there, standing in that light, was someone who would change my life forever. He was still there. 3 hours after everyone else had left, the CEO of the company that had hosted the gala stood alone on the stage. His tie was loosened. His perfect facade had cracks, and he was practicing his speech, the one he'd already given hours ago. You might wonder why a successful CEO would be rehearsing a speech he'd already delivered, but that's when I realized something profound about success. The people at the top, they're often the ones who doubt themselves the most. I tried to work quietly, not wanting to disturb him. But have you ever tried to be invisible when you're pushing a squeaky mop bucket across a marble floor? He noticed me. Our eyes met across the vast, empty space. "I'm sorry," I said. "I can come back later." But instead of dismissing me, he did something unexpected. He smiled, a real smile. Not the practice one I'd seen him wear during the gala. "No, please, continue. I'm the one who should apologize for being in your way." When was the last time someone in power acknowledged they were in your way? I continued cleaning, but I could feel him watching me, not in a condescending way, but like he was really seeing me. "You know," he said suddenly, his voice echoing in the empty hall, I used to do this job. I stopped mopping. This man, this titan of industry, used to clean conference halls. 23 years ago, he continued. Same company, actually. Different building. What he said next would echo in my mind for years to come. I spent 3 years watching successful people from the shadows, just like you're doing now, wondering if I'd ever be on the other side. The silence between us was pregnant with possibility. What's your dream? He asked me, just like that. No small talk, no build-up. When was the last time someone asked you that question and actually wanted to hear the answer? I could have given him the safe response, could have mumbled something about just being happy to have a job, but something about the empty hall, the late hour, and the honesty in his eyes made me tell the truth. I want to build something that matters, I said. I want to create jobs for people like me, people who work in the shadows. He walked down from the stage, his footsteps echoing. With each step, he came closer to my world. Tell me more, he said, and I did. I told him about my idea for a cleaning service that treated workers like professionals, not invisible servants, about profit sharing, about dignity in labor. Have you ever had one of those moments where words just pour out of you, where you didn't even know you had so much to say until someone finally asked? He listened, really listened. Not the polite listening of someone waiting for their turn to talk, but the deep listening of someone who understands. Here's something powerful. Your ideas matter. Your dreams are valid. You just need someone to see you. You know what your problem is? He said when I finished. My heart sank. Here it comes, I thought. The reality check. The reason why someone like me could never make it. But what he said next wasn't what I expected. Your problem is that you're thinking too small. Too small. I was talking about revolutionizing an entire industry. You're not just talking about a cleaning service, he continued. You're talking about reimagining how we value essential work. That's not a business, that's a movement. In that moment, standing in that empty conference hall at 2 a.m., covered in the residue of other people's celebrations, I felt something shift inside me. I'm going to tell you something, he said, pulling up a chair from one of the abandoned tables. Success isn't about who you know, it's about who's willing to see you. He sat down right there in the middle of the conference hall I was cleaning, a billionaire CEO sitting in a folding chair talking to a janitor. Everyone thinks I made it because I was special, because I had some gift. He laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. You want to know the truth? Of course I did. Who wouldn't? The truth is, I made it because someone saw me. Just like I'm seeing you right now. He told me about Maria, the office manager who'd noticed him staying late, studying business books while he cleaned, how she'd started leaving Harvard Business Review articles on the tables for him to find, how she'd introduced him to her husband, who ran a small startup, how that introduction led to an entry-level job, how that job led to everything else. But here's what nobody understands, he said, leaning forward. Maria didn't just give me an opportunity, she gave me permission to dream bigger. Permission to dream bigger. When was the last time you gave yourself that permission? Most people will tell you to be realistic, he continued, to know your place, to be grateful for what you have. He stood up, energy coursing through him now. But what if being realistic is the biggest lie we tell ourselves? What if the only thing standing between you and your dreams is your own belief about what's possible? You know what's crazy? As he spoke, I realized I'd stopped cleaning. I was just standing there, mop in hand, absorbing every word. Tomorrow, he said, there's an investors' breakfast, small group. People who fund ideas that matter. He pulled out his phone, typed something quickly. You're coming, not as staff, as my guest. I couldn't speak. This didn't happen. Not in real life, not to people like me. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? You know that feeling when possibility suddenly cracks open your world, when the impossible suddenly whispers, maybe? I sat in my small apartment, looking at my work uniform hanging on the door. In 12 hours, I'd be sitting with investors, Me, the person who usually cleaned up after them. But doubt crept in. What if I embarrassed myself? What if they saw right through me? What if this was all some cruel joke? Have you ever been given an opportunity so big it terrified you? I spent hours researching each person who'd be at that breakfast. Tech investors, people who'd funded companies worth billions, people who could buy my entire apartment building with their pocket change. But then I remembered something the CEO had said. They're not looking for perfection, they're looking for passion. I pulled out a notebook and started writing. Not a business plan. I didn't know how to write one of those yet, but a vision, a story about what work could be, about dignity, about seeing the invisible. As the sun came up, I looked at what I'd written. It wasn't polished, it wasn't professional, but it was true, and sometimes truth is more powerful than polish. I put on my best clothes, which weren't very good, but they were clean. They were mine, they were enough, because here's what I was starting to understand. You don't have to be ready for your moment, you just have to be willing to show up. The breakfast was at 7 a.m. At 6:45, I stood outside the restaurant, watching successful people stride confidently through the doors. For a moment, I almost turned around, almost went back to my comfortable invisibility. But then, I thought about every night I'd cleaned up after other people's dreams. Every time I'd wondered, what if? What if today was the day I stopped wondering and started becoming? Walking into that restaurant was like entering another dimension. Everything gleamed, everyone moved with purpose. The hostess looked at me skeptically. I didn't blame her. I looked like what I was, someone who didn't belong. "I'm here for the investors' breakfast," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm a guest of—" "There you are." The CEO appeared, clapping me on the shoulder like we were old friends. "Everyone's waiting to meet you." Everyone was waiting to meet me, the cleaner. He led me to a private room where 8 people sat around a table. They looked up as we entered. "This," he announced, "is the person I told you about, the one with the vision for transforming essential work." Have you ever been in a room where you could feel the power, where the air itself seemed charged with possibility? What happens next will show you something crucial about success. It's not about fitting in. It's about standing out by being exactly who you are. They invited me to sit, to speak, to share my vision. My hands were shaking, but my voice was clear. "Last night," I began, "I cleaned the conference hall where you all celebrated, and I realized something. The people who make your successes possible are invisible to you." A few eyebrows raised, but they were listening. What if we could change that? What if we could create a model where essential workers aren't just employees, but partners, where cleaning a building isn't just a job, but a profession? I told them about profit sharing, about professional development, about creating career paths for people who'd never imagined having careers. "You're talking about disrupting an entire industry?" one investor said. "No," I replied, surprising myself with my boldness. "I'm talking about humanizing it." The room was silent. Had I gone too far? Then slowly one of them smiled. "Tell us more." They grilled me, asked questions I couldn't answer, questions about market size, profit margins, scalability. You know what I did? I told the truth. "I don't know those answers yet," I said. "But I know this: every building you own, every office you work in, every store you shop at, someone cleans it, someone maintains it. Those people deserve more than minimum wage and invisibility." One investor leaned back, skeptical. "But isn't this just idealism? Business is about profit, not feelings." This was the moment where I could either shrink back or stand tall. "With respect," I said, "you're wrong." The room tensed. "You don't tell billionaires they're wrong." Business is about value, and right now we're wasting human value. We're treating essential workers like they're disposable. But what if they're not? What if they're the foundation everything else is built on? I pulled out my notebook. My handwritten pages looked shabby compared to their leather portfolios. Last year, the cleaning industry had a 75% turnover rate. Do you know what that costs? Not just in money, but in quality, in trust, in the integrity of the services you depend on? I showed them my calculations, rough but real. What if we could cut that turnover in half? What if we could create workers who don't just clean buildings, but take ownership of them? Who notice problems before they become expensive? Who become partners in maintaining your investments? The skeptical investor leaned forward. Go on. For the next hour, they pushed and prodded and challenged every aspect of my idea, but something had shifted in me. I wasn't the invisible cleaner anymore. I was an entrepreneur with a vision, and they could see it. Have you ever discovered you were capable of more than you imagined? That's what was happening to me in real time. Here's what I think, the lead investor finally said. She'd been quiet most of the breakfast, just observing. I think you're right about the problem. The question is whether you're the person to solve it. There it was. The doubt I'd been carrying my whole life, voiced by someone else. I mean, you have no business experience, no degree, no track record. Each word landed like a blow. She was right. On paper, I was nobody. But, she continued, and that word hung in the air like hope itself, you have something most entrepreneurs don't. What could I possibly have that others didn't? You have lived experience. You understand this problem because you are this problem, and that's worth more than any MBA. She looked around the table at the other investors. I motion we offer seed funding, small to start, enough to prove the concept. My heart stopped. Was this really happening? But there's a condition, she added. Of course there was. There's always a condition. You need to go back and clean that conference hall one more time, tomorrow night, after their next gala. I was confused. Was this some kind of test? But this time, she smiled, you'll be cleaning it as the CEO of your own company. I want you to feel the difference, to remember where you came from, to never forget the people you're fighting for. The other investors nodded in agreement. All in favor, one by one, hands raised around the table. Congratulations, the CEO who'd found me said. You're no longer invisible. But here's what I learned in that moment. I had never been invisible. I had just been unseen. There's a difference. The next night, I stood in the same conference hall, same mop, same bucket, same uniform, but everything was different. You know what's strange about transformation? It happens in an instant, but it takes a lifetime to understand. As I cleaned, I thought about every person who'd ever done this job, every invisible hand that kept the world running while others celebrated. This time, though, I wasn't just cleaning, I was observing, learning, planning. How could we make this job safer, more efficient, more dignified? Where could we add value that others had missed? What if cleaning wasn't just about removing dirt, but about creating environments where people could thrive? With each swipe of the mop, I designed systems. With each piece of trash I collected, I calculated profit shares. Have you ever done the same thing you've always done, but with completely different eyes? Halfway through my shift, I heard footsteps. The CEO was back, just like the night before. How does it feel? He asked. Like I'm seeing everything for the first time, I answered. He nodded. That's the feeling of purpose. Don't ever lose it. We stood there in the semi-darkness, two people who'd traveled the same path, decades apart. You know what's funny? He said. That investor who challenged you, she used to be a housekeeper, the skeptical one. He started as a dishwasher. My mind reeled. All those successful people around that table, how many had stories like mine? Success isn't about where you start, he continued. It's about being willing to see differently, to believe differently, to act differently. He handed me an envelope. Your first check. Seed funding. It's not much in the grand scheme of things, but it's everything if you use it right. I held that check with shaking hands, not because of the amount, but because of what it represented. Permission to dream bigger. 6 months later, I hired my first employee, Maria. She'd been cleaning offices for 15 years. I don't understand, she said when I explained the profit-sharing model. "You're going to pay me more and give me a percentage of profits." "No," I corrected her. "We are going to build something together. You're not an employee. You're a partner." You should have seen her face. The disbelief, then the hope, then the determination. Within a year, we had 50 partners, not employees. Partners. We didn't just clean buildings, we transformed them. We noticed things others missed. We prevented problems before they started. We became invisible assets, not invisible servants. Our clients noticed. Word spread. The company that treats cleaners like professionals, that delivers quality because their people have ownership. 3 years later, I stood on a stage, not cleaning it, speaking from it. The same conference hall, the same gala, but this time I was the one giving the speech. 3 years ago, I began, I cleaned this very stage. Tonight, I stand on it as the CEO of a company worth $10 million. The audience erupted in applause, but I raised my hand for silence. But that's not the real success. The real success is the 500 partners who now have careers, not just jobs, who have dignity, not just paychecks, who are seen, not invisible. I looked out at the audience. Somewhere in the back, in the shadows, were the people cleaning up as we celebrated. So tonight, I want to do something different. I want to invite the people who will clean this hall after we leave to join us now, to be seen, to be celebrated. Slowly, uncertainly, they emerged from the shadows, the invisible ones, in their uniforms, holding their tools. The audience didn't know what to do at first. Then one person stood and started clapping, then another, then everyone. Have you ever seen someone realize they matter? That moment when they understand they're not just necessary, but valued. That's what I saw on those faces. The same look Maria had when she became my first partner. But here's where the story takes its final turn. As the gala ended and people started to leave, I grabbed a mop. My partners looked at me, confused. "What are you doing?" Maria asked. "Remembering," I said. "Staying connected, never forgetting." I started cleaning. My partners joined me. Then something extraordinary happened. Some of the guests, CEOs, investors, entrepreneurs, picked up cloths and started helping. The person who'd challenged me at that first breakfast? She grabbed a trash bag. "You were right," she said. "This work isn't invisible. We just chose not to see it." And as we cleaned together, the successful and the aspiring, the visible and the formerly invisible, I realized something profound. Success isn't about rising above others. It's about lifting others as you rise. That CEO who'd found me that night, he was there too, pushing a mop, smiling. "You know," he said, "you've done something I never did. You didn't just change your life. You changed the game. But here's the truth. I didn't change the game. I just helped people see what was always there. The dignity in work, the potential in everyone, the power of being seen." As dawn broke and the hall sparkled clean, I made an announcement. "Next year," I said, "we're not just inviting the invisible to the gala. We're making them the guests of honor. Because success means nothing if we achieve it alone." What happened that night 3 years ago when the CEO said I'd be invited as a sponsor? He was wrong. I wasn't invited as a sponsor. I was invited as a reminder that talent is universal, but opportunity isn't. A reminder that sometimes the most powerful person in the room is the one you don't see. A reminder that your current circumstance is not your final destination. You might be watching this thinking, "That's a nice story, but it could never happen to me." But what if you're wrong? What if someone is waiting to see you? What if your moment is closer than you think? What if the only thing standing between you and your transformation is your willingness to be seen? Here's my challenge to you. Stop waiting for permission to matter. You already do. Stop believing you're invisible. You're not. You're just unseen by people who haven't learned to look. Your dreams aren't too big. If anything, they're too small. The world needs what you have to offer, not tomorrow, not when you're ready, now. Because here's the final truth. Every successful person was once where you are, doubting, hoping, wondering if they matter. They do. You do. We all do. The only question is, what are you going to do about it? Like this video if you believe in the power of being seen. Subscribe if you're ready to stop being invisible. Share your story in the comments below. This channel is for those who believe that every person has the power to transform not just their own life, but the lives of others. Because sometimes the most powerful revolutions start with a mop and a bucket and someone brave enough to dream bigger. Your revolution starts now. The question is, are you ready to be seen?